So this is the terribly well-organized developer preview video for Exalted 3rd Edition that people got as a result of the Kickstarter. I'm Holden Scherer, and I've got John Merck is in here with us, and we've got a few of our writers and other creative folks who are also going to be sitting in just to make this a little more lively. And many of them have not even heard about a lot of the products we'll be telling you about during this recording. Also on the list of people who haven't heard about these products before, in some cases, are anybody at Onyx Path or CCP. So we need to make sure this is very clear up front. This is a projection of our plans for the future, which may change because we change our minds or because products don't get approved or plans shift. So this is all very much projections. None of this is a promise. This is not confirmed. We can't make any promises to you. This is cool stuff we want to do, and in most cases, probably we'll get to pull off.
What you will not hear is an order for the product list. We're not going to be talking release dates. We're not going to be telling you when this or that hardback is coming out. Also, to make it very clear, we're only going to be talking about 11 or so books tonight. That is not all we have planned. We have planned quite a few more. So just keep that in mind. This is not the sum total. What we selected to talk about are the ideas that we think need to be out there. So that's where we are.
You want to do an introduction for the people we got sitting in with us?
Sure. We have a panel of freelance writers who have worked on Exalted to some capacity or are being groomed to work on Exalted. Let's see, we've got Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
And we got Charles.
Hello.
And we got Eric.
Greetings and salutations.
And we got Lee.
Hello.
And also we have Amanda.
Hello.
Hi, Amanda. Okay. First, we wanted to talk a little bit about upcoming books that have been announced and approved. We just wanted to cover a little bit about them briefly, in case anybody listening doesn't know about Exalted or doesn't know anything about the books that are coming up. Holden, you want to go ahead and tell them a little bit about Arms of the Chosen?
Sure. Arms of the Chosen is going to be our very first supplement after the core book. And it is an artifact book. It's going to go into more detail on crafting, and it's going to have a ton of cool artifacts. Primarily look at this as is the book where we get to really delve into evocations. If evocations were an Exalt type, this would be their first book. We're going to have a lot of evocations in place to help you put together your own artifacts and a big list of just very cool artifacts that you ready to just pick up and run with, including stories, histories, power lists. This is very cool stuff. So if you're looking for something ready to run, it's there. If you're looking to build your own awesome personalized artifact, it's there. Evocations are a new system we have in EX3 that is magic drawn from the wrapper between a hero and his weapon. And finally, Arms of the Chosen is going to have a section in it covering everyone's favorite weapons of mass destruction, War Striders, which will be coming back bigger, stompier, and cooler than ever before in EX3, including a list of War Strider exclusive evocations. Make them really, really cool.
So that is the book that is coming right after the core book.
Yep.
And of course the core book's going to have some pretty sweet artifacts and evocations in there. And so you're going to get your first taste of that with the core book, and then Arms of the Chosen is really going to be this supplement that expands on really unique artifacts, gives you a lot more artifacts, a lot more evocations to play with, and of course War Striders. The next book is going to be, the next book after Arms is going to be The Realm, and The Realm covers the Scarlet Empire, which is the empire of dragon blooded built by the Scarlet Empress. And of course, The Realm book is going to feature a lot about the Scarlet Dynasty, which is the Empress's gigantic family, which is broken into multiple houses that control different facets of the empire, different economical and geographical regions. And these houses are on the verge of civil war, basically, since the Empress is gone. The Realm book is going to go a little bit go into detail a little bit about the houses, but it's also going to cover the society of the realm, the culture, the economics, the immaculate order, and it's not just, I wanted to stress that it's not just like a Compass Blessed Isle book. We are going to talk about the geography of the realm and a little bit about the threshold, but it's not going to be like just a compass book. Here's a city, here's a area. It's going to talk about the culture. It's going to talk about the people, and as well as the houses.
The only thing I want to add is that in 3rd edition, the Blessed Isles geography has been made more varied. The district's more interesting, and it's a big enough place, and at present a turbulent enough place that you can find something to do there with just about anything you can play in this game. It's not a place where you cannot take a solar game ever for fear of immediate death.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you want to talk a little bit about what Fire has wrought?
What Fire has wrought, Dragon-Blooded, What Fire has wrought, being the full title, is our first hardback after the core book. And it has all the rules that you need to play Dragon-Blooded characters. You can set up a game just entirely Dragon-Blooded, no solars around. You can do mixed parties. You can run the scions and dynasts of the mighty realm. You can play the soldiers and heroes of Lookshy over in the Scavenger Lands. You can play just some farm boy whose grandmother had a roll in the hay with a dragon blade several generations back, and now the blood flares up, and you're a hero out there on your own. Whatever kind of dragon blade characters you have in mind you'd like to play, this book will let you do it.
Okay, and to explain the title a little bit, it's a very dramatic title, which we are apt to give our hardbacks in 3rd edition, and the title kind of reflects the theme of the setting material we're going to be putting into the book, kind of describing the rise of the Dragon-Blooded from the least of the Exalted hosts to the rulers of creation. Okay, so those are the books that have been announced, and there are a couple other books that have been approved by CCP, but we're not going to talk about them tonight. We're going to talk instead about the future. And so every book past this point that we talk about are books that have not been approved by CCP, and in fact we have not told CCP any of these ideas. So you people listening are the first to hear anything about this. Not even the writers in the Skype with us right now have heard these ideas.
Heck, not even Rich Thomas has heard most of these.
Yeah, nobody, just me and Holden. So, first, excitement.
I may have heard one or two.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to act surprised anyway. Okay, I think all of them know about, like, the first one we're going to talk about. But
oh, yeah.
There are more surprises later on.
Yeah, okay, so for the most part, these ideas are hidden. And I'm sure they know a thing or two just from offhanded mentions about different parts of these books, but they don't know most of what we're about to talk about.
No, nobody else will either if we don't get moving on them. Come on, let's get the first one.
Okay, the first one is the 100 Devils Chronicle, and that's going to be our bestiary. And what we're covering in the bestiary is what you would expect. We're going to cover a lot of creatures from the wild and different flora and fauna from around creation. And this is not just from monsters and other oddities, it's going to cover and stat up a lot of different animals, because this book is going to be very useful for Lunars. Animals in Exalted 3rd Edition have a list of abilities that are very effective for Lunars who can, of course, if you don't know anything about the Lunar Exalted, they have the ability to change their shapes into the shapes of animals and other creatures that they have stolen the shapes from. So through this book, it's going to vastly expand what Lunars can do. So it's a good book for your campaign, for putting monsters, or if you want to have an animal antagonist or an animal threat, like a tiger attack or a war elephant or whatever. This is going to be a good book for you if you want to, have some more dinosaurs, or, you really want to see Proto Puma Prime. This may be the book for you.
Oh, God.
No.
Yes.
But yeah, as an addendum, if you want a really cool familiar, this is also the book for you.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because if you back the Kickstarter, then you saw the update, and you saw the familiar merit. And if you're wondering what exactly 3 dots of familiar can get you, well, this is the book.
Yep.
That's you.
Exactly.
Proto Puma Prime.
Yeah, this is things from the underworld, from the wild, behemoths, just all kinds of weird stuff in creation. More dinosaurs.
It's
You can't have
also
too many dinosaurs.
It's also got such a unique name because it's considered to be a setting document. The 100 Devils Chronicle was penned by a naturalist and explorer who just went around creation, really writing what the fuck at the top of every page.
Yeah, and this is, finally the first book with a bunch of stats from mundane animals that is, like, completely awesome because you can use it. And, we really want to make animals interesting and cool this time out, since we have a whole Exalt type that can use that material.
All right, Holden, you want to talk about the next one?
Sure. Next up is something that's been kicked around since the early days of first edition, but nobody ever had the chance to do. It's a little book called The Scarlet Manual of Proper Bearing. And this is to be a book about the raising of young dragon-blooded and family on the Blessed Isle. It focuses in on backstory for Dragonblade characters, and there's a lot of advice for running games for young dragon-blooded, potentially in primary or even secondary school, which is just an entire genre of neat stuff into itself. Demigods go to high school that you can't really do in the rest of Exalted, or indeed in many other RPGs. The older Dragonblade hardbacks had such a wealth of information and such rich material on the subject matter that people have clamored since early first edition for a book focusing in on it and the ability to do games of that sort. And during the run of third edition, it's our aim to actually give them what they want and let that happen.
Everybody wants to run Dragon-blooded high school games.
Well, elemental demigods go to high school. It's just, why wouldn't you want to run that kind of game?
Yeah, and in conjunction with that, I really want to do a realm genealogy, and I'm still kind of figuring out the logistics of that. But for me, the bloodlines of the houses are really fascinating, and tracing them back to the Empress and other legendary members of her family tree is a big interest for me, and I'd like to share some of that with the readers, because I feel like a realm genealogy could go a long way to fleshing out the feel of the Blessed Isle and really the size and scope of the dynasty, and give a sense of just all these heroes, and heroes that have gone by, and some heroes that are still there, still alive, because of course Dragonblood live a very long time, that are all over the Blessed Isle, and these characters have really built the Empire, and the Empire is built on the back of their deeds and on the back of their actions and their money and their names, really. So the realm genealogy, yeah, that is something that we're definitely looking at in possibly as part of the Scarlet Manual or close to it.
Yeah, it really depends on kind of what the page count on that demands and how ambitious we decide we want to get with it.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what the demand is for it, if people are interested in such a thing to flesh out their games. And I think it's cool.
Yeah, that's definitely, if anything, kind of a supplement to a supplement, and that's the kind of thing that is always floating around in my head is how to expand the game laterally from each hardback,
mm-hmm.
and not just a bunch of books that are just kind of setting agnostic and they don't really focus on anyone, but books that are focused on each of the hardback splats, with those two obviously being focused on the Dragon-Blooded. I think the idea for the genealogy was specifically to have it be House Nemen genealogy written by Nemen herself. And, of course, it only gives you her view and her bloodline, but it's also a really interesting thing that Exalted in first edition had the freedom to do. It just seemed like you had so many good books in first edition that were just kind of just taking a page out of Exalted.
Mm-hmm.
Not really just like, here, let's divide the game up into regions the way they did in second edition, but
stuff like Savage Seas.
Yeah, let's like Blood and Salt.
Yeah, like let's just do a whole big book about sailing. Wow, okay.
Yeah, let's
it was great.
Devote half a book to Antang.
Best decision anyone ever made.
Yeah.
I love Antang.
Completely new city, completely never spoken of before. One of the best places in first edition.
Yeah, just that wonderful exploration of
Sorry,
we put
completely new nation, not city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's all this green, just empty space on the map, and here's the kind of cool thing you just drop right in.
Yeah, and
which again you can do it in third.
And it's exactly the kind of design intention behind something like a realm genealogy, especially from Nevin's point of view.
Yeah, I just love unexpected depth in an RPG setting.
Also, a book that's I'm really excited about is a guide to the heptagram, which I have slated to pitch to CCP as a 2-part book, which means it will be actually 2 separate books. And the first book is setting material on what it is like to be enrolled at the heptagram. And the heptagram, for anybody who doesn't know what that is the Scarlet Empire's great sorceress academy. It's very prestigious. It is very, very old. It is where all the elite dragon-blooded students go after they finish primary school around the age 17. All those who are practicing in occult, who are, and it's not just for sorcerers, but it's for any dragon-blooded who are going into the occult field, which could be artificing, it could be exorcisms, it could be dealing with spirits. Those are
architects too.
Architects. Those are the building mances and geomancy, dealing with demons. Any dragon-blooded going into those fields, they go to the heptagram, and many are taught sorcery there. So it's about, what it's like to basically be a late teen, early 20 dragon-blooded living in this dorm in basically, what is R-rated Hogwarts.
Yes.
So that is the first part of the first book, Guide to the Heptagram. The second part of that book I have slated to just be a compendium of sorcery, and I haven't decided which circles that will cover. Obviously, it will cover terrestrial circle sorcery. There will be a lot of spells in there, but I may put some other spells in for people who are just interested, because, of course, the heptagram's going to hold more secrets than just what the dragon-blooded can use. There's going to be some apocrypha in there.
Yeah, so the old sidereal teacher lurking around.
Certainly. And so that's what the first book of Guide to the Heptagram is going to be like. And then the second book that I want to come with it is going to be basically a lot like a book that came in the box set Dreams of the First Stage called A Guide to Maru, and the second book in the Guide to the Heptagram is just going to be like that. It's going to be kind of a visual codex of the heptagram. It's going to have pictures of different rooms, like the, sorceress training rooms and experimental laboratories and more mundane things that you'd expect to see, like the dorms and a garden.
The quad.
They make all kinds of grow all kinds of crazy shit, for their apothecary, the infirmary and all that, and maps of the heptagram. So it's going to be, pictures and then like some description of the different rooms and historic events that went on there, and be a very visually driven book.
If you could make it basically the dragon-blooded equivalent of a new student orientation brochure, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, that is exactly what we should do. And to something I forgot that's going to be in the first half of that book compilation is we're going to have information on the different characters who work at the heptagram, different instructors, all the way up to the headmaster, which is Ragara Bagway.
Bagway's a cool dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, maybe CCP willing, or we might even be able to do that one up as a Kickstarter to give some people who are really interested in it, give it a box set treatment, because we'd never know when to stop borrowing trouble.
Yeah, and if it did get a Kickstarter, then there are a lot of students that I'm sure players would want to inject into the heptagram.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. Get your characters enrolled as a student.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would rock. That's one of the very, very few books that is not a hardback, like the Dragonblade hardback that we're considering for a possible Kickstarter. We're trying to be very conservative with our Kickstarters because, we've only got so much time and you've only got so much money, and
ultimately
we want them to be something special.
Yeah, ultimately the Kickstarter decisions are up to Rich Thomas. So, when and where we run Kickstarters and for what is up to him. But if we could run a Kickstarter for that one, that would be a good idea. Let's see. The next book on the list is a setting book, and this is going to be the first in basically a series of setting books under this title. Our setting books are going to be called Different Skies. So I'm about to discuss Different Skies Volume 1. Different Skies Volume 1 is covering the River Province, and it's also covering the West. And the River Province is basically it was very, very large in previous editions, but now it's kind of more of a tightened region, referring to the areas around next to Sichuan, Great Forks, Luxai, and all the hundreds and hundreds of rivers and river nations and river kingdoms in that area, including Thorns, which was recently invaded and conquered by the Mask of Winters, who's a Death Lord.
He's a bad dude.
A bad dude.
Bad ghost dude.
The basic draw of the River Province is that it's just a very ancient region. Of course, much of creation is old, and there are ruins to be found everywhere you go. But the River Province was a very active center in the first stage.
The breadbasket of the old realm.
And so there are many, many solar ruins and exalted ruins in that region, many of which have yet to be discovered. It's just rife with spirits and tombs and ghosts of the solar exalted. And there is, it's also the area the most reported activity of the liminal exalted, and that probably has to do with the guild. So, if you're interested in the liminals, you should stay tuned because we are going to not talk about them tonight, but they are going to be popping up in quite a few books that we are talking about. The kind of the hook of the River Province is that they're really set against each other. The Mask of Winters was kind of in previous editions, he was kind of a schemer and kind of just biding his time, playing a game of brinksmanship chess with the River Province. And in this edition, he is much more aggressive, and he's not really trying to just finagle his way. He was very shiftless in the previous editions. He didn't do much. He conquered
posturing with politics.
Yeah, he conquered thorns, and then he didn't go anywhere. But in this edition, he's very much an active threat. He's not a threat they think is coming in the future. He's a threat who's already been trying his way into the River Province. He's already been attempting to push. He's already been attempting to evade and conquer. And so they have a problem because they could unite and they could possibly defeat the Mask of Winters, but it would leave them terribly disorganized and disheveled after the losses and the destruction that would surely come from such a battle. And they have other problems to worry about, particularly from the Lunars, who are, just outside the River Province. There's some new strongholds out there, barbarian holdings, and of course Lunar-backed invasion forces that are ready to move in and step up their fronts wherever they can, grab land, grab territory, and set up their strongholds as they do. So the River Province really has a bit of a problem in this edition, because what they are faced with is something that they need to really build together against. They need to integrate. They need to build infrastructure. They need to really become kind of a singular entity in order to be able to stand up against multiple threats. And they're not eager to do that. What you have in the River Province is a lot of city-states that are autonomous. They have a union, and they work together, and they set some policies together since they share these river networks. But there are a lot of nations and kingdoms in the River Province that hate each other, that are often despotic and at war, and some of them are quite genocidal. And there's a lot of neighbors that don't get along. And
every last one of them is very, very big on their independence.
Yeah.
It's kind of the rallying cry and the big central banner of the...
into this mix, you have the agents of the Mask of Winters, which are his Abyssal Exalted, trying to stir shit up, trying to keep the River Province off balance, keep these nations at each other's throats, and trying to start shit. It's very interesting. It's also really a hotbed for the new exigents, because of just all the profound spiritual activity going on in this place at this time.
Not to mention that there's all sorts of enemies parked right next door, and the place doesn't get along with itself too well. That you've got a civil war brewing over in the realm, and everybody across the inland sea looking for any opportunity to jump on an advantage, and the incredibly rich resources of a weakened, divided, or war-broken River Province is a hell of an inviting target. So, it's a very, very cool place beset with a lot of problems.
Yeah, and of course the classic settings there have been freshened up a bit. Lookshy has a particular problem because it's one of the richest and most powerful city-states in the River Province, and it has been footing a lot of the bill for the defense of different portions of other city-states' territories. And also, when Lookshy goes up against some of these threats. It's the one that takes the losses. So a lot of these places, they have standing militaries, but they're really just garbage. They couldn't do anything. And so Lookshy is very nervous about the future. It is looking ahead, and it's seeing that it has in the estimation of at least the general council, the most to lose from any kind of collapse of the river province. Of course, everybody there is going to see it differently. Even a partial collapse, though, could be very damaging to Lookshy because it has so much invested in the rest of the river province. We've also really revitalized. We've done a lot of thinking about Nexus, and we've done some tweaking to Sijan. The introduction of liminals is going to make that place pretty interesting, as you are going to find a bit more about liminals there. Great Forks has been really shaken up and stirred up by the introduction of the exigents in 3rd edition. There's a particular situation, spoiler alert. The exigents have been gone for a long time. At least there were no new exigents being created. Exigents have been around since the fall of the 1st age and even before, but there were no new exigents being created for a long time. And now there are new exigents being created, and Great Forks has become kind of a center of heroes. A pilgrimage from all around creation has just spontaneously erupted of heroes and legendary men and women and people full of swagger and full of tales coming from a long way to light on Great Forks and try to petition the gods there for a chance to become chosen. And of course, that's quite a shell game there, because the gods don't actually control who is chosen. They just have sometimes the ability to choose champions. So Great Forks has become kind of a de facto capital for exigents. There are quite a few champions there, and there are quite a lot of interesting people converging on the city of temples now.
So a lot of new happenings in the good old heart of the Scavenger Lands.
Yep. And then the West, if Holden, you want to go over the West?
Sure thing. If nobody had anything they wanted to pitch in with, we can kind of crowding out the writers.
I just want to say that you hadn't told me this, and I'm really interested in seeing a book that covers the Scavenger Lands as a cohesive whole. That was neat. I'll shut up. I want to hear about the West.
Alrighty. The West, as anyone who's looked at the map may notice, the West is a lot farther away from everything than it used to be, and this is very intentional. The West has spent most of the modern period of creation somewhat isolated from the rest of the world. I mean, there are old First Age maps. Everyone knows it's there. And there's even regular commerce with the West. It's possible, but difficult. Like the Denzik city ship, for example, is still in the game. A massive city-sized ship that makes a big circuit around the oceans of creation. And every time it heads up west, it does so with a flotilla of merchant vessels that make the trip alongside the Denzik, like Remora's, schooling with a shark. But because the West is so far away and so isolated, for most of creation, the West is this very mysterious and exotic land of riches and wealth and wonder. They tell tales about it the way, in the Middle Ages, in Europe you'd hear tales of distant Cathay. And anyone who's been there is just, immediately interesting, exotic. They come back with a treasure ship laden with pearls and gold and God knows what else. So the West is there. It's not very accessible. The realm has always had a presence in the West, but it's been difficult to enforce since it's so far away from the Blessed Isle. And the Empress always kept the satrapies there intentionally weak, because there was so much opportunity for a successful and wealthy satrap to go, hey, I'm thousands of miles away from anyone who could bother me. Why don't I just set up my own little empire here? So, rapid turnover of military governors there, and the realm's always had a very light presence. The West, while not free in the way of the scavenger lands, was relatively unburdened. This is going to change as the civil war in the realm goes hot, and the first shots have already been fired out there in the hinterlands. The great houses are rallying their resources to fight one another on the Blessed Isle, but as they start to accumulate losses and lose assets, they're going to look around for anything that can continue to fund their war efforts, or any fallback position they can find to strengthen themselves in the face of their enemies, and the West is a wide-open, unclaimed frontier for anyone powerful and desperate enough to go there and try to claim it. The West in 3rd edition is looking at all-out war coming to it from several great houses, looking to stake their claims. Now, there's no Empress to hold them back, to stop them, to keep them from just pillaging the place all the way down to the bedrock. And the powers of the West, which have never gotten along on the best of days and have, outright depopulated each other's islands on the worst, are looking at bending knee to a realm that it's the wolf among the sheep. It's not interested in setting up sustainable tribute. It just wants everything it can get. Or banding together with their traditional hated enemies and other miscellaneous neighbors. And this has given us some interesting new spins on old Western powers. The probably the most interesting of which is the new role of the Skullstone Archipelago. The enormous shadowland encompassing a number of islands, ruled over by the Death Lord, the Bodhisattva anointed by dark waters. It's a creepy place. It's also an incredibly wealthy place, riding on the labor of the dead and treasures scavenged from beneath the waves. And in 3rd edition, the Bodhisattva is the biggest dog native to the West, with one of the most powerful navies, and is acting as a natural rallying point for the sovereign Western powers to resist the encroachment of the realm, as deeply uncomfortable as they are with that idea.
Yeah, it's kind of a flip on his character for those of you who don't know anything about the previous edition. The Bodhisattva was just there to be a menace and a threat, and of course he is still quite menacing and still quite threatening, but he is actually committing a lot of resources to keep the West free, so to speak, to bolster defenses against the realm. I should also mention something that Holden left out earlier. The war for the realm really goes hot first in the West. There are several houses there that have managed to accumulate some power over the years, and this goes back to before the Empress vanished. And one of those houses is actually, when it realizes that the time is now and that the Civil War is basically going to happen and the West is going to play a big part in deciding it, it just pulls a sneak attack on one of the other houses and wipes it completely out of the West. And that just starts the shit with every householding in the West, and all their allies and all their neighbors are soon to get involved. So the West is really jumping. It's alive and it's been revitalized, and you got Dragonblooded versus the Bodhisattva versus the Lintha versus fucking Moray Darktide, and it's great. And there, of course, we're gonna have a lot of new settings. We are kind of changing some of the focal places that were there before. We're downplaying a little bit the abalone, what was that? Coral Archipelago and
Wavecrest and Coral, yeah.
Wavecrest. Kind of downplaying their feud because they're so far apart. And
separated by literally every single other nation in the entire direction.
And making some more and new very new places in the West focal. Which, by the way, did you want to talk about the, was it Wujian?
Wujian, yeah. And we're still working on it, so none of this is finalized, which again is a refrain I need you to, people to keep in mind applies to like every single thing in this recording. But yeah, Wujian, this is drawn from the original pitch we got from awesome writer Eric Brennan when he thought it up, that it's that Wujian is it's a natural port that acts as a transshipment point for much of the West, and indeed tons of traffic in and out of the West. It's a natural locale for refitting ships, offloading merchandise, going to or from the realm, and picking up crews, engaging a little R&R. But, as with many places in the West, the space available is limited, so what was once a series of small villages has grown into a massive, teeming metropolis. It's rickety, chaotic, lawless, exotic. Imagine a Kowloon-walled city on an island. Smaller islands around the city that have been absorbed due to the construction of suspension bridges during the long ago period of the dragon-blooded shogunate. And those islands, too, they're filled with these ramshackle urban blocks. And the docks and markets of Wujian are some of the greatest in the West, and its location means much of the traffic in the West eventually makes it there. But the city's chaos personified, and within the central neighborhoods of the city where no sunlight falls, there is no law. It's these lightless alleys and stairways, man's reached limit of civilization, and anything's for sale, and anything can be taken by force. It's a place of the ultra-wealthy in their high towers. It's a place of thieves. It's a place of hiding outcast sorcerers, demon worshippers, mutants, wild mutants that have nowhere else that will tolerate them, violent gangs. It's everything that's cool about fictional Kowloon, or other such, crime fortresses, basically. And it's something you don't generally see in classical or Asian-influenced fantasy landscapes that dominate, so much of creation.
Yeah.
And it's also a place just made for really exotic fight scenes, kicking each other through,
it's not a dragon-blooded dominated port either. It's a very international, so to speak. It's closer to the West than it is to the Blessed Isle, but it's still very much isolated. It's far out in the middle of the ocean. It's a little cluster of islands. It's a place where many ships from many different places go to dock. And what actually happens, since Holden mentioned the Denzig City ship earlier, is a lot of ships and a lot of voyagers and guys on maritime business ventures. They plan their journeys around the passage, the very regular passage of the Denzig City ship. So ships will actually, because the West is so far out there, they'll actually intercept the Denzig City ship on its path, and it stops for trade. And they do trade with it, and they get resupplied, and that allows them, after a little bit of rest and resupply, to make an even further trip. And they can do this. They can go to Faxai on the call, and then they can hit the Denzig City ship and make it to the West, or just go straight from Faxai to the West. There is a point on the call. There's a very coveted port on the call that is not freely accessible to traders, to guildsmen, to the realm. So they have to do a lot of wrangling to get to the West, and jumping off the Denzig City ship from certain directions that are not more southerly is the only way to get to Wujian, because you don't want to have to go through the inland sea, especially the waters of the Empire.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of a workaround that is made possible by both Wujian's positioning and the Denzig City ship. So there are many, many different kinds of ships you will find in port at Wujian, many different nations, many different people. So it is not a realm-dominated port.
That reminds me.
John?
Sorry, go on.
I'd just like to interject something here. For those of us, for people who might have been, joined the line in the second edition, you guys might be used to the format of the Compass books, where we had one for each direction, and they're meant to be exhaustive resources. And one of the things I got was, I joined the line in second edition myself, and one of the things that I, kind of ran into among other players was like, well, I want to start like a Southern game, and I don't know, the Compass South is coming out in like 6 months, maybe it's best to delay it till then. But, we have a big section of locales playable right out of the box in the core book, and you will, get to know about those soon enough when it drops. And, in general, the setting books here, like you'll notice that, John said that the plan is for it to cover 2 entirely different directions. So, what you're getting here is not so much like an exhaustive encyclopedic treatment as, just an overview of what's happening, what the key players are, and, how you can use this to...
each of the directions covered in Different Skies 1 is, and the subjects that are covered within that direction, because it's not exhaustive. There's hundreds and if not thousands of city-states in the River Province that we won't talk about at all, or might just mention by name in one paragraph. And there's certainly dozens and dozens more that we don't mention because we don't know about them. You're going to put them down there and make them up for your game. But they're all tied together by a common theme and kind of a thesis for what we're talking about in the book. Yeah, they're not intended to just be like, this is the single big great book of the West. We'll never look at the West again.
Right.
We want them to be like living, breathing directions. And for anyone who is interested, because I saw some people asking on the message board, that is how you pronounce Faxai. It's Faxai.
Yeah.
And it's Getimian for whoever asked about those guys. Okay, I'm done with tangent.
Okay. So
it's so rare to get to actually say the names.
What did we want to talk about next?
Next up, let me see. Next up was a subject I think near and dear to your heart, Heroes of the Neobraran.
Yes. Okay.
Wait a moment. What's? Damn it, Liz! Don't just message me. Say it out loud.
I just think Eric has been champing at the bit to talk about what he's been working on, but it's okay. It's just.
It's all right. We're gonna get some good reactions out of this one because I don't believe we've talked to hardly anyone about this one.
Okay. Yeah. Heroes of the Neobraran is a very interesting book, and it's quite unique to what we're doing. It's a book that's going to be set in or discussing an event that took place in very early First Age. And that was a great war between the fledgling solar empire and the vast and very ancient undersea empire, which was actually a conglomeration of nations that weren't an empire at all initially. There were many undersea races, many different kinds of races back then, sorcerously advanced, inheritors of very advanced magical sorceress technology and artifice. And these undersea peoples, they witnessed the Solars. First of all, they saw the Exalted win, and cast down the mighty masters of creation, the masters of the gods, the enemies of the gods, and ascend. And then they saw them go to war with the Lintha Empire, which was a very, very powerful empire back then at its apex. And they annihilated the Lintha. And indeed, the contention in this book is that the Lintha are extinct. Now we know that's not actually true. The Lintha still remain in present day, although very fractious, very diluted, very curse-eaten.
Greatly reduced
And greatly devolved, actually.
Yeah.
But the Lintha were once very mighty and very, very powerful. And the Exalted just crushed them in a very brief war and bloody, brutal war. And they're this big, of course, big seafaring aquatic race. And they were mostly an island race based on the surface, but very much attached to the waves, attached to the ocean.
They considered themselves masters of the sea, and if you happen to live there, screw you.
And they, they had a very, very constant, reliable connection with the undersea races. They were not, nothing like in an alliance or anything. The Lintha did not care about them, but they were very aware of one another. And when the Lintha fell, it got the undersea races very, very nervous, very scared.
Got their attention.
And they decided to band together, and they formed a league called the Neo-Braran League, which ends up becoming a fully fledged singular force. And they build a quote-unquote, air quote, war machine that is capable of going up, and I don't mean a literal machine, going up against the Solar Exalted, the chosen, the hosts of the Exalted. And the story is basically that these guys, they almost very nearly destroy the Solar Empire, the fledgling Solar Empire. They bring the Exalted to their knees. It's a very, very close war. It's a very brutal war that obviously that the Exalted eventually win, and this book is about how they win and what the war was like, and and it is about a little bit about what the first stage was like. Now, it's not going to be a world overview. It's not Dreams of the First Stage. You're going to see very little of what the actual first stage as a whole looked like. You're not going to see all of creation, but it's going to be a glimpse into what it looked like, and you're going to notice very quickly, if you're familiar at all with Dreams of the First Stage, that the first stage in EX3 looks quite a bit different. And what else do we have featured in this book, Holden?
We've got the meat of the book is this long ago war, and that history is largely forgotten, at least if you happen to live in Chiaroscuro or on the Blessed Isle or anywhere above the waves, because people tend to forget that there are mutants and there are the remnants of pre-human races living down there below the sea. But
and of course,
the
fair folk.
And of course, God help us, the fair folk. But in truth, probably, not 100% sure on this, but there's a great likelihood that there are more people, or at least more intelligent reasoning beings in the West that live under the waves and that live on the land. So that's a rather big oversight, and one the Exalted made in the first stage, to their deep regret. Mm-hmm. But that's the meat of the book. It's about this long ago forgotten war. Other parts of the book deal with its fallout, and in the modern day, you will absolutely have the ability to make a character from one of the surviving races of the Neo-Braran League, and kind of find out what happened to them, because some of them are still around today. And there will be a host of new rules that are useful for playing out the Neo-Braran War in your game, if you want to do that, or just useful to sit down at your table. New sail charms, new ship stats, aquatic behemoths. Well, actually, if you're dealing with the Lintha, they have naval behemoths, but they're not in the book. Sorry, rambling. So, new crunch, new artifacts, new evocations, new rules for games that are going to deal heavily with seafaring and the like. And we may have some other goodies for that book that we're not ready to talk about yet. We're still seeing if we can fit them in there and pull it off.
Hint, new Exalts hinted at.
Damn it, John.
Oh, no. But yeah, so let's say you pick this book up and your storyteller goes, gee, I want to run a campaign in this setting. Could you do it?
Yeah.
Is that
yes.
Okay?
Yeah, totally.
So you can.
At that point, you're going to have everything you need.
Yeah.
pretty much to run a game there, as far as classic Exalts go. So this is kind of that may be a little bit of a spoiler in release order, but that book's coming a bit later.
It's a very, and keep in mind, it is, we say again, a very early look at the first stage. I mean, we don't have the timetable down yet, but they may or may not have even finished building their big city at Meru yet.
Yeah, Meru.
They're just getting finished, like, conquering the world and putting crowns on their own heads.
Meru is basically the city of the gods still. Like, the gods have just moved out, and some gods are still there because they've just found out, fuck me, I don't have a place in Yushan, I'm going to be left behind. Goddamn that unconquered sun and his shiny promises. It's Meru and its splendor and its greatness from Dreams of the First Stage box set is not a feature, because they have not built onto it yet. It is a book focusing really on just a flash, a snapshot of the solar realm in its infancy, and really what's it like to go to war with a race of beings that are older than you. They have more sorcerous knowledge than you, they have better artifice than you, and they also have exigence on their side.
Mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit, we got sidetracked a little bit earlier talking about Blood and Salt back in first edition, where they just pointed at a blank spot on the map and dropped down something fantastically cool. And Heroes of the Neobraran is kind of a way to show that you can do the same thing with the setting's history. This is something of enormous scope and import that it's still completely, believable that no one who is not like a successor, one of the people who's crushed in the war, would even remember it today. Once upon a time, the Exalted of the first stage were brought to their knees, and they rose again. And again, it's not the same first stage you saw in Dreams of the First Stage back in second edition, but you could drop this war into that timeline, and it would fit. It's just trying to make a point. This is your game. This is Exalted as a chance for you to exercise your imagination, put your stamp on it, make up cool stuff. That's why we make up cool stuff, is to inspire you to make up cool stuff. Don't just use our cool stuff.
It's also just a fraction of the first stage to show you, if you ignored everything that you knew about the first stage, you could have wars like this everywhere. You could have cities of wonder and power and awe and age that were never before imagined. And that's a big part of Heroes of the Neobraran. Of course, in the present day, those undersea nations are in ruins. They are destitute. And they are the ones who survived the war, because not every one of them did. They are very, what's a better word than butthurt?
Damn it, John.
They are
resentful.
Very resentful, vengeful. Thank you both. See, that's why I'm the developer and the writers. Very resentful of the Exalted. And, of course, they are going to realize the Solars have returned. And Eric Brennan, I wish he could be here. He wrote very interestingly about an undersea race in Compass West.
The Pelagials, my favorite addition to that book.
They were definitely a part of this idea, and played a part in my coming up with it. And there was also a Neverborn tie in that, so that the Neobraran, the ruins of the Neobraran, basically are kind of a potential front for abyssal intrigue, as well as lunars. And
lunars have a significant advantage in underwater environments, because they don't have to. They can just assume the shape of marine life.
Right. And for anybody wondering, a lot of that stuff on the bottom of the ocean is in that space separating the West and the Blessed Isle. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Yep, easy not to think too hard about what you're sailing over to get to and fro, but in the second age of man, that can buy you problems sometimes.
Absolutely, and especially considering that a lot of those races down there have also been beset by the furfolk, and in cases actually integrated with some of the aquatic furfolk. So you know, there's interesting stuff going on down there.
Enslaved, if you prefer.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Plus, even if you don't want to follow that whole thread of vengeance and ancient grudges, it's just great to have interesting stuff going on out in the ocean.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
I mean, most of the people down there don't think about something that happened 5,000 years ago. You know, they're just getting on with their lives and doing stuff. But, as a culture, it left marks on them culturally that still endure.
And I wanted to stress that it's not a bunch of Aquamen. You're not really going to find a bunch of just humans who can breathe underwater down there. These are sea people. They are very, you have fishmen, you have whalemen and sharkmen. You've got people who have the upper body of a human, but the lower body is just tentacles, and very interesting, different races down there, and capable of exigent exaltation.
Yeah, well, the mutants anyway. Because half of the people down there are wild mutants, stable wild mutants of one kind or another.
Can we finally have my guys with the glowy anglerfish things for hair?
Absolutely.
Sure.
I love those guys.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, we can absolutely. This is
I had
third edition featuring Lee's glowy anglerfish hair dudes.
I had Lee and Eric Brennan in mind from the beginning for this book, and of course, everybody here is on my mind for it.
I bet you anything.
Those two.
I've actually been
Dean will want on
rambling on about the undersea for quite a while now.
Yeah. So I hope that's exciting, at least to Lee.
Oh, it is. For me, at least. I hope it's exciting for the people who are listening to this after it's been recorded.
Oh yeah.
And now for an in-joke, which nobody outside this talk is going to get. We should have Mel draw the anglerfish.
Oh God.
And they should be just like that anglerfish.
Oh, screw you, Liz.
You're so.
Well, they are supposed to have
Fucking
anglerfish teeth
fish.
as well as anglerfish.
And you can
angler
fight
hair.
the peach crab from her Infernals illustration.
Mr. Pinchy rules. He's the best champion that anyone ever exalted.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the dude in there, that's his familiar.
All right. So the moving right along. The next book is
I'll take it.
it's really an idea that Holden has been pestering me about since before we knew there was going to be a third edition. We actually laid the ideas for this as something that we were going to eventually do for Ink Monkey / Scroll of Errata. Holden, take it away.
I fucking love God-Blooded. I love them since the first time I saw, what's her name, Ladal Kibak Korin back in the Dragon-Blooded hardback in first edition. They're neat.
For the record, Ladal Kibak Korin is a dragon-blooded demon blood. She has dragon-blooded powers and demon-blooded powers. And so everybody who's going on about, we need to...
Don't cross the streams!
Don't cross the streams. We need to make sure that...
We're crossing the streams.
Don't get God-blooded power. No, the very
crossing
first published God-blood was an Exalt.
Yes. Yeah, that's in Exalted. One might note that just about everything can and will bonk everything else, and you get more crossbreeds going on than Star Trek. So it's cool. So God-Blooded have always been pretty popular among a lot of people, and they were popular in first edition. They were popular in second edition. People are like, I would love to play a God-Blooded because I see all these cool NPCs in the books. And then they always come in like at the tail end of the edition, and they get like a chapter in some big variety show book. And they're always they're the real Frankenstein Exalts, forget the liminals, because they're made out of spare parts from like 5 or 6 other character types. And it just always sucked. I love God-Blooded, and in third edition we want to give them their own book and just really dig into them. What it's like to have a touch of divinity in your veins in a world of men and gods and heroes, and to stand between and to give just really robust mechanics for playing one, so they're not just cobbled together out of bits and pieces and odds and ends. Because, the whole thing was just like take spirit charms, use them as your charms. It never worked terribly well, and B, again, it just felt like getting to play with leftover parts. And in some cases, it worked so poorly that you had, like, in first edition, I think Ghost-Blooded had to have this entire extra charm tree just to let them use ghost powers, because most of the ghost powers were just not applicable to something that had a body.
God help you if you try to make a Fey-Blooded.
Oh yeah, and the Fey-Blooded rolled out for the Fairfolk even had their own book, so they were just slapped together. But we give them a proper treatment that they never really got over 2 previous editions, and
this should be reassuring for those people who are worried that Exigents are going to take the place of God-Blooded in 3rd edition.
No, Exigents are absolutely not going to displace God-Blooded. We love God-Blooded, and we feel there's enough conceptual range between the 2. We want to embrace the variety that God-Blooded represent. You have guys who are just just mortal dudes, except maybe a little bit second-sighted, or they have wings or something, or just a couple of custom merits to make them cool. All the way up to you have the rare few God-Blooded who are rocking charms and can actually throw down with a young Exalt. And we want to give you a book that'll let you represent all that range and put together a lot of mechanics just for God-Blooded. Because another thing we're not going to have in 3rd edition is a universal spirit charm set. Got published in Games of Divinity in 1st edition and Roll of Glorious Divinity in 2nd edition. Every spirit, there's a very few common spirit charms, like Measure the Wind and Materialize. But most spirits in 3rd edition are using unique charms, and when you see the spirit stat block, it'll so you don't have to look anything up. Just use the stat block and go. It does what it says on the tin. So, the borrowing method is, again, not really going to be applicable to God-Blooded anyway. And just to be clear, when I say God-Blooded, I'm also including Demon-Blooded, Ghost-Blooded,
yes.
the children of men and fairies, all under this header. Any of the kind of the half-breeds of spirits and supernaturals and people. So
okay.
We're just going to do them up in style because we like them.
Holden, do we have a working title?
Right now it's just God-Blooded. So it's as you might guess, it's not one of the ones that's going to be coming out.
God-Blooded, what everybody bonking everybody has wrought.
Yes.
Oh, no.
What promiscuity is wrought.
Yeah. That's a good one. What bonking has wrought.
Yeah, that's more concise
God.
than
Now
mine.
I'm imagining the cover of this being like some sort of Divine Maury show where a god is confronting all the mortals and the God-Blooded kids.
Oh no. Amanda, say something. You've been very quiet.
Hi.
Put you on the spot.
I'm just listening.
Also, her boyfriend is listening in. He's like the one lucky Exalted fan who gets to hear this live, and he's like too shy to speak. All right, that fulfilled my goal of getting Nick on the recording.
Success.
Awesome, I love the jokes, but it's actually addressing the whole divine parentage thing. Something I've never seen satisfactorily done in a game before.
Yeah, it's just if you sit down and think about it, there's very, very interesting figures. How do people respond to you? What does it mean having a god or an elemental, or God help you, a demon in your life, or not in your life for that matter? And it opens up a lot of interesting little minor character types that are fun to play.
Divine Heritage is not just a power source.
No, it's also character style and social implications, and it's just really, really rich ground to play with. I mean, we could have just tossed God-Blade out of the game and said, Exigents will fill this role, but, they're absolutely worth keeping around. They're different enough and interesting enough. There's enough to do with them.
Because the Exigents just don't fill that role.
No, they really don't. They're something different. They're Exalts, and, if and Exalts and God-Blooded have just never been the same thing. Although they could hang out together, and in EX3, if you want to do that, absolutely you should. One of the things we want to stress in this edition is kind of that being a hero is sort of the first thing that's notable about a hero, rather than what color his ass glows when he beats people up, if it does at all.
Yeah, and one of the mechanical distinctions is that Exalts tend to go in one direction with their charms. They start at a base charm and it climbs. So over time, over the years, as the Exalt gets older and older, you're expecting that Exalt to get stronger. But with a God-blooded, as with a spirit, at generation, they may have some very, very interesting or potent powers just right out the box. So they do not grow the same way Exalts do.
Yeah, and again, we're less interested in just giving you like super, super rigid structures to fit them into, because we don't have to cram them into one chapter and make everything fit. So things like, at Essence 3, all of them, turn into something else is not the sort of thinking we have to subject ourselves to. So you have the potential for really powerful exigents out there. Not exigents, good God. You all screwed me up on purpose. But really powerful God-blooded out there, and again, really meager ones. It's just kind of whatever you want to put into your game. We're going to have something there for you. It's going to be neat. Do we want to move on to the next?
Was that everything on the God-blooded?
I think that's about all we can do without I start telling people how I want to construct like magic for them and things, which bit premature.
Actually, a fascinating discussion, but probably take more time than we have.
Yeah, I can hear
more
a
things
lot
to
of
cover.
people like just coming out of their chairs for that discussion. They want to hear how you're going to do that. But next book.
Next book. Perhaps later, perhaps on the forums. Perhaps I changed my mind. We'll see. Next book was something we're tentatively titled Of Crown and Sword. And this came out of us talking about the mass combat system of 3rd edition, which I'd like to note is not actually a mass combat system. It's just the regular combat system, which armies can show up and fight in. So, there's no separate mass combat system. But we were talking about that, battle scenes with like hundreds of soldiers running around. And books about warfare, and specifically we were looking back at the old Scroll of Kings from 2nd edition, which did like short write-ups on major militaries of creation, and then there was just a book full of stat blocks of armies. And there was some good stuff in that book. The siege weapons were neat. The trap rules were neat.
War gods were pretty cool in there.
The war gods, yeah, they were cool, and there was a neat system for naval combat in there. But overall, I think was one of the books of 2nd edition which was less well received. Not because it was badly written, but because the way it was put together, I just don't think excited people. So we were talking about, well, how could you have done a book like that, a book about warfare that would excite people? And that's sort of what Of Crown and Sword is. There's years ago, back in the revised edition of Vampire Masquerade, they used to talk all the time about how vampires engage in political fighting with one another, or they'll vie for control of this industry, or gain influence over the police department, or this or that or the other. And one day, Justin Achille, a vampire developer, he said, well, we talk about this stuff all the time, but I mean, what does it mean to try to gain influence over this and that? What does it mean when vampires engage in political wrangling for control or for influence over this or that piece of the city? What are they fighting over? How do they fight over it? And what do they get out of it if they win? And what does winning look like? What does losing look like? And out of that came like two amazing supplements, The Gilded Cage and Midnight Siege, which are on Drive-Thru-RPG. If you like Vampire and you don't have those books, get them. They're awesome. Those, I think, were possibly the 2 best supplements they ever did for Vampire. It was just the subject that everybody has in their game, but has never personally experienced, or at least I've never, waged a campaign of control to determine what went on the local news. I don't know if any of you have. But it was something that was in every game, and nobody really kind of knew how it worked. And so that book just tackled it from the perspective of, what is this? How does it happen? And most of all, how do you tell stories about it? And that's the approach that we've used in the past. It was very successful with Masters of Jade. It's like nobody really knows much about mercantile finance, huge globe-spanning consortiums, and money laundering and things like that. Nobody really necessarily wants to, but they do want to tell stories about it. So how do you make that stuff really cool and use it in your game? And that's what we'd like to do with Of Crown and Sword, is look at creation's warfare, its dynastic politics, and not just the capital D dynast, but the intrigues of princes and like the powers around Port Kalin and again the great house of the dynasty, but even just powerful families in tribal confederacies or between different septs of the Delzon. How do people play the Game of Thrones, so to speak, in creation? How do they fight for power, for fame, for wealth, for glory? And what happens when the wars go hot? How do you tell stories with these things? How do you tell a political story in Exalted? How do you tell a war story in Exalted? How do you stitch those two things together for an amazing epic in the styles of something Homer would have written, or Romance of the Three Kingdoms? Because
we
that's
probably
one
won't
of our.
be as long as Romance of the Three
We'll
Kingdoms.
try not to be as long as Romance of the Three Kingdoms. But I mean, that's foundational material for Exalted, and it's always been very hard for a lot of people to pull off because the intricacy and because they're not quite sure what to do when the rubber hits the road or how to tie it together. And that's a book that we'd really like to try and do in 3rd edition, is just a storytelling guide to the big, epic, to conflict on the big epic scale. And that's epic in the actual sense of the epics, not, the meaningless word that we now have in slang. I think that's about it on Of Crown and Sword right now. It's one of the newer editions we put on the lineup, as opposed to some of these which are like 3 years old.
Yeah, okay. So, there's been a lot of buzz about the Exigence, which we just unveiled
Yesterday.
Yes. And that was, if you're a backer, you probably have read the new fiction that was just posted yesterday, and there's been a lot of reaction to it, and overwhelmingly positive reaction.
And if you haven't, for God's sake, go read it now. Pause this video.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into a lot of spoilers about how they are made. I do want to talk a little bit about what they are, and that they are going to get a hardback, and what you can expect from that hardback.
Because people have been asking us, how in God's name are you going to do that hardback?
Absolutely, and that's the main thing that we're going to tell you. So Exigence, they are a kind of Exalted. They are not a latter-day Exalted. They came along very early in the process. What they are is, I'll basically just outline it very simply. The Unconquered Sun has the secret of exaltation, and the Incarnate, by extension, those are the Maidens and Luna. The other gods do not. I know how to do it, you do not. But it became very, very necessary for there to be more champions than just the classic, or what we think of as the classic chosen. I won't say why, although I invite the rampant speculation.
A giant unexpected war with a huge underwater kingdom that everybody was previously unaware of may have been a contributing factor.
They're older than that.
Yes, but I mean...
Damn.
Now we have to change the whole origin because Lee spoiled it. God damn it.
Just one example of the sort of other reason that people would have. Anyway, go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
The Unconquered Sun decided to photocopy his butt. That made the Exorcism. No.
I am so sorry for forcing that change to canon.
Yeah. So they are the chosen of various spirits, and there's a lot of shenanigans that have cropped up since then. I don't want to get too deep into that, but gods are corrupt quite often. Like, not all the gods that have gained access to the Exigence have been quite as heroic as that field god in the Gen S fiction. And some gods are actually bamboozled, but either way, some of these potential exaltations make it out of the hands of the ones that they are intended for and into the hands of spirits that would never, ever be able to gain access to the Exigence. And so you have what is a phenomenon the sidereals call the black market exaltation, which is a kind of potential exaltation that passes through various bidders until it is either recovered by the sidereals or it is triggered and a new champion is made. There are a lot of interesting implications when you think about what has been done previously in Exalted with captured exaltations, abyssals, infernals. So as many options as you have with exigents, which is literally, well, we're going to get into that, but literally an exigent can be the chosen of any kind of god that we've got in print, plus any you can imagine.
I want to do a chosen of shenanigans now that you said that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That'd be a scary dude. Sorry,
Yeah.
Owen.
And like I discussed earlier, just off the top of my head, as a really weird idea that you might want to have, like as kind of explaining to the IRC channel, which I happen to pop into the Exalted IRC on SorceryNet every once in a while. I was explaining to him, you could have a really strange. Let me get my exact idea here. You have a really strange exalt. You could have one that's from a god of metamorphoses. So at a certain point during your character's story, he just sheds his body and becomes this perfect crystal and obsidian winged being with essence-based charms, where previously he was using attribute charms. They can really be that rangy. They can be that unique, different. One of the things that people have been confused about
been engaging in category error.
They've been thinking of the exigents as one kind of exalt when it's really a category. It's like it's almost like terrestrial or celestial, but it's even broader. It's even broader than that, because it encompasses things that are you might identify as terrestrial, well, not terrestrial, but celestial. In some cases, something you might consider terrestrial, but not quite. They are not one kind of exalt. They are an umbrella for N exalts. Now, I'm not saying that there are now thousands and thousands and thousands of exigents.
There aren't.
Flooding creation. There are not. There's never been 1,000 of these at one time, but there are as many varieties as you can think of. They are there to literally be anything. So they range on the power scale. They range on, are they ability exalts? Well, some of them. Are they attribute exalts? Well, some of them. Can they have essence-based charms? Absolutely.
Can they have stranger than that?
Can they have virtue-based charms? Certainly. And do they reincarnate like celestial? Well, quite a few of them are unique, and when they die, that's it. That exaltation is gone. Some do cycle through reincarnation. Some have even stranger transmission. They are different. They are unique. They are, whatever you can come up with. And we've come up with quite a few exigent characters which will be featured in this book. Now, another thing that we wanted to say right off the bat, if you like any of these characters, if you like Genest, if you like the Chosen of Mass, who is actually the Chosen of Shalrina, the Daimyo of, the Daimyo Faces? Or was it the Daimyo of Mass? I can't remember.
It was the Daimyo of Faces.
Faces, yeah.
Okay, yay me. There's +1 for my memory. If you like these characters, which some exigents are singular, like this is the only exigent of this kind. Others are like, well, he made several kinds of exigents with this power set. But if you like the character, many are singular. If you like the singular exalt and you want to be the Chosen of Shalrina, these characters are not squatting on space that, canonically is yours. This space is for the players. Feel free to throw these characters out, to take their charm set, to say this one died and I got its exaltation, or it never existed and that was my story. So these characters are examples, but they will be in the Exigents hardback to help you see what Exigents are like. We are going to have a few actually mocked up with their charm sets, so you'll see what that looks like. You'll have some exigents that are fully playable out of the box.
We'll have at least one type that there's more than one of them that came out of one exigence. There's like several of them out there. And we'll have the whole charm set for you, just ready to play out of the box. We'll have at least one, maybe more. So even if you're like, I'm terrible at homebrew, I can't construct anything on my own. Or you just don't want to go through the hassle of putting together the Exigence hardback. We'll have some ready to play out of the box options.
And we'll also show you how you could take the charms of this Exigent and then the charms of this other Exigent and combine them.
Matrix first?
Combine them to make another Exigent. Anybody who's familiar with this game has looked at a charm set, and you can tell that if you read one charm set and you read another charm set, you understand those charm sets. Then if we combine them for you in an interesting way, like you take Jeunesse charm set, and then you take this the Psychopomp spirit-based charm set, and then you get this Reaper Exalt.
Just take the harvest bits and the death bits.
And suddenly you got like a Grim Reaper Exalt. People can see that, and when we combine the charms, this wouldn't be good for this, and you could reskin it and it'd be like this. That's very intuitive, and it will be intuitive, but I'm just saying, we can present that, and we are presenting that right now, as a matter of fact, without telling them about the Matrix. Now, the Matrix is a little more complex. Do you want to go ahead and tell them?
Sure. This is, the big challenge for the Exigence that we had to overcome is the one that everybody else has, of course, been going, well, how the hell are they going to do this? People have been speculating like they'd have one charm set, and then you could just do like plug and play things on it. And that's not what we wanted to do, because again, they're not one Exalt any more than the Celestial Exalts are one Exalt. Each Exigent is just its own thing. It's like an entire hardback unto itself, except there's only the one guy, unless there's a couple of them. But, they could be anything. They could be as weak as a Dragon Blade. They could be as strong as a Solar. They can be whatever you need them to be. Each Exigent can be whatever you need for the purposes that character has to play in your game. So how on God's earth do you do a hardback around something that can be literally anything? Well, the truth is you can't. You can't hold people's hands on every concept or just do every concept for them, but you can help them get there on their own, and that's what we're doing with the Charm Matrix in the Exigence hardback. And what this is we're going to take our best crunch writers and give them the task of thinking up every kind of cool supernatural effect they can, and then to give it a mechanical representation. Sans price, no prerequisites, just like here's like a guy who can do a sonic scream, just yell so loud it can shatter stone, and then they give you a mechanical mock-up of that. Here's kind of how that power works, and then we'll have here's if you have a guy who can spin webs out of essence, here's how you could do these effects. Here's how you can do a guy who controls fire, or who has lava or poison for blood. It's just every effect we can think of that would be at all tricky to sort of do it yourself, we'll just have there so you can look at it and try and use that as a helpful guideline in creating your own charm sets. That does mean you'll have to set prices, you'll have to put them into trees, assuming your kind of Exigent even uses charm trees and doesn't have them structured in some other way. Because they can get as weird as alchemicals and then some, if that's what you want to do. But it's just a toolbox to help you do your own homebrew, and the book will also have essays and guidelines where we talk about how we price charms, how to design things like excellencies for varying power levels or varying concepts, how to get these charms to ride the right power level you want for the Exigent you're building. What if I want, a Volcano Exigent who's really no stronger than a Dragon-Blooded? It's like, okay, well, what if I want a Volcano Exigent who's like a little bit, who's up there in the neighborhood of a Solar or a Lunar? Well, you might do this. It'll have more informal voice design essays than anything we've ever published before. Where we finally tell you about how we design charm sets, what to think about when you're structuring magic for a guy, what pitfalls to avoid that are really easy to fall into if you don't know about them, and just how to do your own homebrew. And then we're going to do as much of the hard part, which is, the crunching it out for you as we can. Ultimately, you'll have to do a little bit of patching and welding to get it all working in the end, because we don't know what your idea is. And you can get as ambitious as you like. We're going to take you as far as we can, hold your hand, and then give you as much advice as we can before we let you go to finish it up yourself. So anybody who wants to do their own Exalt, just make up your own entire kind of Exalt for the game, you can do that with this. In fact, even if you didn't want to make an exigent but just wanted to drop an actual honest-to-God entire type of Exalt into your game, like the Gatimians or the Lunars or whatever else, you could use these guidelines to do that as well. So it's just really as much the best homebrew guide for Exalted we could put together. And then again, if that sounds like too much work for you, we got some guys who are ready to play out of the box. Or you can just cheat and look at Genest's charms and go, well, I'll just take these and these and this from over here, and I'll just take these two charms from the Matrix to bridge the concepts, and boom, I've got a guy to play.
Is it also going to help with people who want to do homebrew for one of the splat sets getting a published charm set? Like if they want to make a special custom charm for a solar character, would they be able to use this advice?
Probably, yeah. I mean, let's say the Lunars book comes out and somebody decides they just desperately want to be able to spin essence webs, and we don't include a charm like that. Well, if we have it in the Exigence book, you could use that as sort of a base to tinker with and modify for your Lunar. So it's just homebrew is all about A, creativity, and B, running with the examples you have that are close to it's already there. And so, it should be applicable to anything, yeah. I mean, it's mostly about constructing an Exalt type. We not going to give you specific charms about, this is the logic of lunar charms or whatever. That's not the subject of the book. But yeah, you could repurpose it for that, sure.
Yeah, and it's well, to be more succinct, Liz, yes, they will find that. They will find our advice and basically our insight very useful for building charms in general. Another thing to keep in mind.
I did go on forever, didn't I? Sorry.
Well, another thing to keep in mind here is that we will be featuring exigents throughout different books wherever we can fit them in, and they are part of the setting. And we're gonna put their mechanics and their charms and example exigents wherever we can fit them. Another thing to clear up is Gatimians and Liminals and some of the new Exalts that I hinted at, like the hint within the hint for Heroes of Neobrine, there may be some Exalts hinted about there. These guys are not exigents. These guys are what you would consider to be more normal kinds of exaltations, although their origins are really not normal. I mean normal in the sense that they work like you would expect. They are not made from the exigents. They are made from some very, very powerful non-incarnate sources. I think that about sums it up for what we wanted to say about the exigents.
Unless anybody had any questions or anything you'd think we ought to get out there to people right now. No? All right.
Crickets.
Crickets, yeah. Not even Nick has an opinion?
I am not known for my opinions.
Before we move on to, we're about to wrap this up and talk about the final book on our list, which I've already told people what we would be talking about. But I just wanted to read something in the Kickstarter comments. Lydia wants to know, how do you pronounce some of these obscure terms? Okay, the one of the 5 metals, the gold one that Solars use, that is Orichalcum. The heavenly Exalts who do martial arts and they die a lot in 2nd edition, that is Sidereal.
Sidereal Exalted, not Sidreal, not Sidereal.
Sidereal.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sidereal. It's Autothon. CH is friggin' silent.
Cast, it's like talking about Dawncaste, Zenith, Twilight, it's Cast.
Do people really mispronounce that?
God Machine, the Great Maker is Autothon. Excuse me, the Machine God.
The God Machine is something else entirely. Although,
that might be Autothon.
That might be
yeah,
Autothon
you're
also.
now you just like crossover.
I've got World of Darkness on the mind, so forgive me. But
This place is Autothonia.
yeah, he the big metal guy like put everybody inside his body and then fled creation, which that's as creepy
really
as it sounds.
Yeah.
That's Autothon, and a lot of people play inside of his orifices.
Dude.
And they mine for treasure.
Dude!
Way to make it all weird, John.
And they
That's
Got it weird at some point.
canceling their Autothonia games.
counter strange creatures. This guy actually has an Exalt based on him. Anyway, they're a whole nother topic. I don't want to scare our readers by telling them about alchemicals.
That's reassuring.
We love our alchemicals and our alchemical fans.
It's just that you know how alchemicals have been in like the last 2 editions.
They actually got like a good, like a 3-year run in 2nd edition before they got...
Yeah, it's just, it was at the very end of the game's life cycle, so.
It's like, yeah, finally get to play my favorite guy. Where's everyone going? The curse of the alchemicals.
So, the final book on our little preview is Exalted versus World of Darkness. Ooh.
Oh god, we're actually talking about this?
We're actually talking about this.
Yeah.
And if I have my druthers, that will be the actual title you see on the front of your book.
Right.
Awesome.
This is
I hope it features a solar punching the hell out of, I don't even know, I don't know vampires, some vampire Methuselah everybody loves. No!
Unconquered Sun versus Cain, right there.
Unconquered Sun putting Cain in the Crippler crossfades.
We love World of Darkness. This is not a smear book.
Right.
The full title, Creation is Conquered by Cain.
Benson, go sit in the corner.
So...
I'm trying to figure out a way to work the Swan is Cain meme in here, and I'm not coming up with anything good. Somebody else will have to do that.
No, I don't.
I never understood that anyway.
I don't want
to.
I don't want to know about that one because I don't want to cry about that one.
What do you say?
No,
yeah.
You heard the whole thing. I don't know how it got started.
Let's just pretend it didn't.
Okay.
This book, it is what many Exalted fans who are around in the end of 2nd edition would consider a shard. It is, in fact, what we consider a shard, which is a reality set in Exalted that is apocryphal. It's not part of the canon thread. Exalted versus World of Darkness is a shard, and we have a pretty good idea for it, and this is basically our pitch. Holden?
Now I'm on the spot. Okay. The idea of this book is that we would bring our flagship Exalts over into the World of Darkness and sort of let them run loose. The idea we're working with right now, and we've been through a couple, is that we'd springboard off of the reckoning that happened near the end of the old classic World of Darkness, where the underworld blew up and the gates of hell got cracked and the heavens shook, and that it's been many, many turnings of the Wheel of Ages since the end of the Age of Legends, when great heroes bestrode the world and unleashed mighty sorcery of a kind not known in the modern day. And the world's grown diminished and small, and the only remnants of magic are horrors and arrogant wizards lurking in the shadows of the cities. But there comes a reckoning, and a supernatural catastrophe hidden from the eyes of Joe 9 to 5, and doesn't show up on CNN, but it shakes the supernatural world to its foundations, and many among the vampires and werewolves and mages of the World of Darkness believe it's the end of times, and this is about where things got in the canon World of Darkness back in the Revised Edition. In Exalted versus World of Darkness, when the heavens shake, certain ancient seals are broken, and the last glory of an older and better age comes back into the world. The Incarnate are woken from their slumber or released from their bondage, whichever it may be, and walk the world again in the guise of men. If you've ever read Neil Gaiman's American Gods, think something in that vein, and you're kind of close. If you've read the Time of Judgment fiction with Lucifer walking America, again, if you're thinking in that vein, you're pretty close.
They are pretty gangster, just like you imagine they were in Games of Divinity, especially the Unconquered Sun. So the thread at this point is that the Incarnate are back, and they are trying to move up the spiritual food chain, get their places back in the celestial hierarchy. They are not, they are not just de facto. The Unconquered Sun is not the sun god.
Yeah, the werewolves out there, they've got Helios on their roster of spirits, and indeed, Helios is there. He is not the Unconquered Sun. Yeah. They're not the same guy.
They've got their own. Luna? No, they've got their own Luna. They've, everything. These gods have been replaced by other gods.
Although Luna wears so many faces, it's not completely out of the question she might be going to war with herself. But that's Luna.
So the Incarnate are very, very gangster. They're working together to kind of, regain their station in this.
They've lost much of their power.
World they've awakened in. And that is where the Exalted come in. So.
The Exalted, with the Incarnate return, the Exalted. And suddenly, men and women of great spirit across the world are suddenly imbued with the power of the bygone heroes of forgotten ages. And so you have the Exalted at loose into the world of darkness. So the question is, which Exalted and how do you realize this? And what we're looking at doing is a big, pretty prestigious book, maybe about the size of Damnation City, if anyone has that. Could easily see the thing pushing around 400 pages. It will contain a core system in and of itself. It won't just try to use the EX3 rules. But will contain a variant of the 20th anniversary World of Darkness system and some notes for getting all of the guys from the 20th anniversary game lines to play nice with it, or at least the big three, the vampires, the werewolves, the mages, get their powers to line up in a mixed game without any problems. And then the bulk of the crunch for the book is the solar, lunar, and sidereal Exalted translated into the mechanical language of the world of darkness and having their power adjusted a little bit so that they can sit in the same story scope as the other guys. I mean, they're still tremendously powerful beings, but not just a straight dump of the mechanics in a way that doesn't make sense given the sandbox they're playing in.
So I take it that although we joked about it earlier, we're not actually going to have the Exalted show up and just steamroll everybody.
No, that would suck. No, the World of Darkness is an awesome, amazing gaming property, and we would look at this as a chance to just let the two coolest games White Wolf has ever done, and Ian Watson of the Trinity games glaring at me right now as I say that, but just the two coolest things we've ever done. Get loose and play in each other's sandbox. And, we really, really wanted to do this during Shards. And we kicked around this idea for the Exalted Modern Shard in the beginning, but ended up not doing it because we just looked at it and we said, there's no way on God's earth we can do this in 20,000 words. Mm-hmm. We would need a whole book for it. And here we are setting our schedules and thinking, it would be really cool if we could just give ourselves a whole book for this. Maybe we can. If CCP is willing to let us run the risk of having, our solar punch your vampire in the face, or see what happens when, oh dear God, I just had a terrible thought occur to me. Just the sidebar. So what happens when my vampire embraces a solar?
Yeah.
Just letting that fun out of the box again after all these years.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of room for supplements coming off of this, say it gets made.
If it was really popular and people wanted more, we could maybe come back for Dragon Blooded and Demons
Abyssals.
And work other things in, yeah.
Abyssals.
Mm-hmm.
another thing to mention is that we may also want to power up some of the denizens of the World of Darkness a little bit as we power down the Exalted. So we're gonna add some mechanics to classic World of Darkness that really lets the Exalted kind of, let the game be a little more cinematic. Lets it be a little more actiony.
Still,
but we don't want to break the scope of the World of Darkness. We don't want to break its political, very, character-driven, realism-driven scope.
Right, no vampires hitting anybody with an uprooted train or anything like that.
Yeah, so it's going to play largely by the rules of the World of Darkness, but you will have a Solar who's able to, run and leap from the top of one skyscraper to the other and probably cut the rotors off a helicopter as he passes by or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Or a Sidereal who just goes through a kata dodging bullets.
Or brings back our favorite Exalted Modern charm.
Ah, yes.
Ah, yes. Charles, you have to remember that.
Holistic bullet methodology?
Yes.
That was Vance.
That is our last best chance of seeing holistic bullet methodology ride again.
Okay, so
CCP, if you're listening, please let us do this book.
I think that about.
We promise not to screw up your MMO.
Well, if I could shill for the mechanics a little and maybe throw a bone to the people who are interested in that.
Sure.
Part of the bit that would make that so much more possible, the Exalted versus World of Darkness, is that 3rd edition.
Exalted versus the World of Darkness.
Yeah, whatever.
It's important. It changes the whole tone of the title.
Is that our new system is a totally redesigned thing where it's not all binary whiff effects until someone runs out of magic juice and dies immediately. So it's more engaging as a system so that you can do something more low key, easier than, because we're already rebuilding the system from the ground up, so it's already going to be more amenable to crossovers like that.
Yep. But really, this is about moving over the World of Darkness's awesome sandbox and being really bad guests and messing up the carpet and setting the drapes on fire while the Exalted are there. And seeing just the fun of a werewolf pack trying to drag down a Solar.
And everyone being really confused when werewolves and lunars fight.
Yeah.
It's
Bastet. No, it's Sorokia. Wait, what is this?
It's something that can bring the two fan bases together also.
Yeah, there's really, in the beginning we were supposed to be, the fantasy game for World of Darkness players, and we've kind of gone past that, and that's awesome. We're our own thing now. But I started my White Wolf, experience loving the World of Darkness to death, and it'd be great to just bring those two things back together again without having to actually wed the two settings at the hip. In the official game line. Just give it to the people who like it, and maybe introduce some cool new games to people who've never had occasion to play them before, or and this is crazy that we've been doing this for this long, but or people who never played them because those games are kind of before their time. Discover them now.
And Exalted gets to be the game line that provides the great crossover book for all the other ones.
Sure. Sure. Assuming they don't do it first, which they probably will. We couldn't do this one for years, but it's something we'd really like to do sometime in the future when we've got a few of the hardbacks out of the way first.
Can a Solar also be a mage? No.
Oh dear God, freeform magic on top of a Solar.
Only Sidereals.
No. Okay, so that's about it. I'm ready to wrap it up.
Anybody have anything to say before we part ways? And
what happens to a vampire that's exposed to a Solar's anima?
Read the book and find out, Lee.
Thank you to all the fans for all of your money, but we could still use more.
Damn it, Charles.
We're not supposed to be that blatant.
It's been a great Kickstarter. We really appreciate everybody backing us and pledging. And
and
tell everybody tell everybody, tell your friends, get them involved. We are working on right now a document for people who've never seen Exalted, never played Exalted, never heard of Exalted, that is going to explain Exalted very concisely. And we're going to get that out to you. We're going to be posting that on multiple websites. We're going to be linking it in the Kickstarter. So be paying attention for that, because you guys asked for it. You're going to get it.
And we really want this to be the edition that doesn't just make the people who stuck with us through second edition or who are around in first edition happy, because the second's freshened up. We want new people. We want new people to have the joy of Exalted. So spread it around, get your friends interested, and keep an eye on the Kickstarter updates, because we have more planned. We're going to show off some more mechanics. We're going to show off more art. And we've got a very special preview other than the Infernal and Abyssal previews, ready to go up in the later stages of the Kickstarter. So keep coming back. We got more stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to emphasize that, one of Exalted's greatest strengths is that its fan base is, so to speak, really evangelical about it.
Yeah, they're
it's
awesome.
It's how I got started. I was first kind of like, Exalted, I'm not sure. And then I actually read it, and I interacted with people who loved it. And, well, look at me now. It's eating my brain.
Same here.
Exalted will eat your brain. That's our new sales pitch.
Yeah, that is a good line to end on. All right, guys. It was a great talk. Thanks thanks everybody for listening in, and thanks to everybody who is listening at home, and thanks for your pledges.
And thanks for playing Exalted.
Yeah, your continued interest in Exalted. You guys are great. Good night.
Night.
Night.